What's up, everybody? Coach Ben podcast here on Jiu-Jitsu Mag Podcast Network. I'm here with Jim and our special guest. Jim, bring her in, please.
Will do, Ben. And I'm excited that this morning we have the one and only Southern California born and raised, the first Invicta and UFC strawweight female champion, the Cookie Monster, Carla Esparza. Good morning, Carla.
Morning.
Carla.
Well, thanks for joining us. Ben and I, we've had a couple of conversations about the merits of being able to get back to your feet in either an MMA match or a self-defense altercation, just in an altercation. And then, and also we followed that episode up with what is the best base for MMA? And we both pretty much agreed on wrestling. Even though we're jiu-jitsu fanatics, we both agreed that wrestling is the best base. And when it came to elite wrestling in the world of competitive combat, you were one of the first names we came up with, if not the first, actually. And here you are. So we wanted to delve deeper into it and talk about it. And you started out as a wrestler, correct?
Correct. I started out wrestling on the boys team in high school.
Were you the only girl?
There was a girl before me, Adelie. She was a senior when I was starting my first year, my junior year. So I kind of had someone to pave the way a little bit for me, which definitely made it easier.
Going off of Jim's question, this is how we do it on this podcast. We talk about something, and then Jim knows somebody in the sphere that might, have experience. And we mainly talked about in the last few weeks how, in MMA, I watch every fight. I'm a sports bettor. I'm big into the sport. I see people almost every week, jiu-jitsu people, get taken down and they get stuck. They can't get up. And, fights are basically lost on their back. And, Jim brought you on, and I thought this is perfect. Carla, I've seen her beat people in the UFC by keeping them on their back. And, it's just this, I don't really have a specific question, but mainly, is this something that you guys train for and talk about when you're in your MMA practices? Keeping the fight on the ground, being on top, and then getting up when you're on the bottom.
Definitely. And I also think it depends on the level of the jiu-jitsu practitioner you're fighting or competing against. Obviously someone who's super dangerous on their back, you'd probably want to be a little bit more like cautious and, stand a little bit tighter and just control more. But maybe someone you felt more confident that could not submit you, maybe it's like, okay, well, maybe I can get a little bit more wild. Maybe I can try a couple more things, which is actually kind of what I did in my last fight. Like I jumped for a footlock, which maybe wasn't the best thing, but I just felt confident. So I felt like the confidence to get a little bit more wild.
Yeah, your last, by the way, I mentioned that, me and Jim talk about this a lot on the podcast. I'm a professional sports bettor. I bet you last fight against Marina Rodriguez, right? I believe you were an underdog for some reason. So you were an underdog last fight.
Yeah, I usually am.
Well, that's why us sports bettors make a lot of money off you, because you for some reason you're an underdog in many of your fights. You were a slight favorite against Michelle Watterson. You basically took her down and controlled her. Grasso, it was kind of the same thing. And this is one of these situations where I feel like this is kind of a different question, but you're always undervalued in the sports betting world. Do you know why that is? Why is that?
I think a lot of that goes, maybe because my personality tends to be a lot more humble. I don't, trash talking myself. I don't go in verbally with a lot of like confidence and outward, like, I'm going to kick this person's butt. I'm better. I'm this and this. Like, I tend to like to do my talking in the cage and like let my actions speak for themselves. But I think not hyping it up is kind of, on that, maybe made fans not value me as much. And, I think just size wise too, I'm so small. So just visually it's like, oh, this girl's going to get her butt kicked,
So, to that point, you don't engage in it, But what is your feeling about this whole, it seems like this is the latest genre of the trash talk to the hyperbole of, you know, talking about what's going on in a fight. What is your feeling on that? Whether you decide to do it or not, how do you feel about it? Does it bother you? Is that a fallacy to think that it really bothers people, or how
Oh,
do you
I
feel?
love it. I think it's awesome. Like I am like a fan of the trash talk. It's entertaining to me. I'm like, oh, did you hear what so and so said? Oh, he got him. You know, like I think it's hilarious. I think it brings the fans in. I think it's really awesome. But I also think it's good to have that contrast of people who are maybe like a little bit more humble and quiet, you know, like someone like Khabib, you know, who, you know, just maybe some people can be like enjoy the trash talk, but people can also like look up to the humbleness and the respect of someone maybe like who doesn't trash talk as much. So I think it's good to have that kind of combination.
And you know, and talk about it. I mean, that he's the talk of the town right now. Habib is, right. And what did you think about him taking off his gloves? Because I remember when I saw him taking off his gloves, I just figured he wants to be out of his gloves because I just knew he wasn't going to retire. What did you think about that when you saw that?
Um, I love that you know that ritual of people taking off their gloves because it's something that people actually do in wrestling. On their last wrestling match, they will take their shoes off and leave them in the center of the wrestling mat and walk off. And for me, even before I saw anybody do it many years ago, like when I just started fighting, that was something I always envisioned myself doing before it was cool, like taking my gloves off and leaving them in the center and like walking off. I think that, you know, it was unexpected, but also very expected, you know, with everything that happened with his father. And I don't see him coming back because I read somewhere that, you know, his mom asked him to do this. And I don't think he's hurting for money. And he doesn't seem like an extravagant person. So, you know, I think to honor his father and his mother, I definitely, you know, see that being a permanent thing.
Yeah, I don't see him coming back either. I feel like it's a guy like him. It doesn't seem like he would just say that, you know, in the coming. But you never know. You never know. A lot of people have. Um, just more on the wrestling aspect. I'm just going to ask you straight up. What do you think for MMA is the most important aspects of wrestling that you need to have as an MMA fighter? Like just the fundamentals of wrestling. You know, for me, I think getting up off the ground is super important. Are there any others that you think are important for MMA?
I think like the top control, the balance on the ground is huge because I've seen some amazing jujitsu fight, you know, like athletes go against wrestlers and they have just stayed like so solid and tight and people try to get their balance off, but they've just had such control with their balance that it's just almost impossible for people to deal with, even though their jujitsu's level is so much higher. It was, you know, they just neutralize it. So I think that's a great thing. I think for someone who's a grappler, like, you know, if you're a better striker, then of course the ability to stand up is a great thing. But obviously, if you're a better grappler, then the ability to bring it to the ground is much better. So I think it really depends on who you're competing against to say like what is the best like feature of wrestling for fighting, because I think it could be a
Absolutely.
combination of anything depending on the opponent.
Absolutely. I'm more trying to kind of tease out of you the fundamental skills that, let's say I'm training an MMA fighter, right? And I need to make sure that this fighter has the basics to survive in like an MMA fight in most scenarios. You know, is there any, so you talked about taking the fight to the ground. So obviously, you know, being able to control where the fight goes. You know, I talked about, you know, being able to stand up and you know, obviously, yes, there are situations where you may not want to stand up if your striking is not on your opponent's level. But is there, like, for example, is there a situation where you think being on your back is beneficial in an MMA fight? Because I'm trying to figure out a situation where being on your back is beneficial. Unless you can submit the person, I just don't see how you can win a fight that way. And I'm a jiu-jitsu guy, I'm a jiu-jitsu
Yeah,
black belt. This is my thing.
strategically, it doesn't make sense. I think once you get past like a certain point on the ground, let's say 30 seconds, a minute, and you're not submitting this person, I mean, there's always the possibility, but I've never seen an actual number, but I would say most likely the rate of like submission after like a certain point, maybe 30 seconds, whatever, is, or a minute, is highly unlikely.
That's a great point,
So
actually. That's a great point.
yeah,
I never really thought about that way, and that's a great point. After a certain elapsed time, it just submissions are more and more rare because you're getting tired and the other person's posturing. I think it's the same for like round 3 finishes are pretty rare. Round 5 finishes even more rare. In the
yeah.
UFC anyway. So it's kind of that's a great point. I never really thought about that. That's excellent. That's excellent. Cool. Jim, did you have a follow-up question to what you were asking?
Well, I don't know if it's really a follow-up, but you got me thinking in one of your answers is that, okay, you are the fighter. So you are essentially the team captain of what goes on because you're the one that has to step inside the cage, right? So that being said, who structures your training? Because at the same time, the fighter has to give 100% trust to their coaches, their team, but it's up to you to assemble that team, right? And I know you work with Mike Safai for your strength and conditioning stuff, but then I know you have worked with the Gracies, and you have your MMA coaches, your striking coaches. How do you assemble and how do you approach a typical fight?
So that's a very like loaded kind of question or topic because the MMA culture is so like just bounce around, train here, train there. It's like not consistent. It's very rare to see a person just train exclusively with one gym for like a very long period of time. And there's good and bad things to that, but I think the fighter themselves often is in charge of their own camp and who they train with. Like I train at a lot of different places and, some of my teammates do, for example, but that can be very difficult because, like you said, I'm in charge. So if I feel lazy and I'm like, I don't feel like going in today, then I won't, or I don't feel like training for a month, then I won't. Who's going to tell me otherwise? And of course there are coaches who are on top of you, like get to training, but we're all adults. So I feel like this is an awesome sport, but it's also very easy to get lost in the mix and caught up in just different things in life and to, be undisciplined because it's also a very hard sport on your body. So I could, some people are just like, yeah, I personally like to take time to kind of like skill build when I'm not in camp because it is very hard on the body, but it's hard to find. And I think a lot of it's like trial and error, like trying out just different jiu-jitsu gyms, strength and conditioning coaches. Like I've been with Mike Sapai for a few years now and I love him. And, there's something to learn from everywhere. You just kind of have to find the skill style and the coaching style that works best with you with different coaches. And you kind of have to communicate with everyone because you can't have like a balls to the wall practice Monday morning and then have the same thing Monday night and have the same thing Tuesday. It's like not everyone can kill you at every training. So you really need to be able to communicate with your coaching staff and sometimes make sure that they communicate with each other. So, everyone's kind of on the same page.
Yeah, I think most people don't realize that they aren't in the MMA scene. Not working with athletes or a fighter is what you said about how even members of the same team that train together, they sometimes train at different places, work with different coaches, even major teams. I've been to like ATT, and there's people train with different coaches even within the same gym. People train with different partners even within the same gym, and it's kind of a it just is what it is. MMA is kind of like the Wild West right now in terms of how things are regimented. Jim, you remember when we were at Muscle Farm, it's just a free for all. There are set coaches, but it's not as regimented as like a professional football team. You know, it's more of the athlete taking care of, you know, themselves. Or I don't know if you have this, Carla, but do you structure your camp, or do you have a head coach that structures the camp?
I structure my camp. It always can kind of switch with depending on what's going on, depending on the opponent. There's certain things that it's like are gonna happen no matter what, but sometimes it's like maybe I need to spend a little bit more time in jiu-jitsu for this fight, or wrestling, or this or that. So I kind of take charge of myself, and I think people that don't really take charge of themselves can be missing something sometimes, because you know, of course you want to like trust your coaches, you know, but I think it's kind of good to get their input, and also, you know, what do you think? Like, think independently and think like, I know myself better than anybody knows me. Like, what do I need? What do I feel comfortable with in my game right now? I feel like maybe not, a coach is not watching every single thing you do. Maybe my jujitsu game, like, man, like, oh yeah, you're great in this area, but it's like, actually I feel super uncomfortable when someone's mounted on me, or if I'm in this certain position that I'm always getting in, like I need to focus on this for this fight or whatever. So I think it's good to have your coach's input, and also kind of know yourself and take a really good look at like what you think you need.
And you know, that's a good point, which brings me to another question that I wanted to ask you about. And it's, you started out wrestling. So once you start taking in jujitsu, how hard was that transition for you? Because now you're in this other realm of grappling where you have to unlearn a lot of habits that you specifically drilled to learn, you know? So how was that transition to you? And do you still kind of combat emotionally with those two worlds?
It's so crazy. So when I started jujitsu, I was still wrestling in college. So it's funny you say that. I had to be like, no jujitsu during wrestling season, because I could not get in the habit of going to my back at all, especially with freestyle. Back exposure, 2 points, just showing your back to the ground. So it's definitely opposite type of mentality. Going into jujitsu, you know, like you just want to smash and like hold and pin someone, when it's like, I'm pinning you, but I'm not advancing, you know, right. I'm not submitting, I'm not gaining points. So, you know, it's definitely like hard to get used to, but I would say after all these years, I've been, you know, like I said, I would do it in the summer when I was in college. I've been doing this for, I don't know, 14 years or something. So, I'm comfortable, but it's definitely still counterintuitive sometimes.
Yeah, you're an MMA fighter at this point. I mean, you're not a pure wrestler. I mean, you have like some ridiculous amount of fights already. I think you have like over 25 fights, right? At least, yeah. You have a lot of fights. So at this point, I mean, you're an MMA fighter, and it's just so you know, we balance things out. There are definitely bad habits from wrestling that transfer to jiu-jitsu or MMA, you know, giving the neck, you know, there's certain, you know, things where you can get your back taken, but you know, it's just that it just is what it is. And there's also, I would say, the bad habits of jiu-jitsu that go into MMA are actually possibly worse or even more catastrophic. You know, like for example, you know, we've been on this for a long time, me and Jim, but just being stuck on your back, you know, being stuck on your back, can't get up, you know, you don't have the wrestling skill or the ability to heist up and get up out of here. You know, that is almost as bad as, you know, sticking your neck out at the wrong point. You know, you're going to lose the fight. You can't move 3 rounds. And I mean, you've beaten people like this. I've seen fights where, you know, I think it was just a flawless, you know, way to beat somebody without taking damage and you know, it's a secure victory. There's no, I think you beat your last fight. I know you said you dropped back for an ankle lock or something like that, but
twice.
I mean, you were twice, but I mean, here's the thing is, if it was a jiu-jitsu person dropping back for that ankle lock, they might not be able to scramble back up to the top, you know, but you at least have the capability to get up and scramble back and achieve top position. And I don't remember the fight too much. You did win, so I won some money, but you know, you probably were able to get back on top, right? Or at least you were not, stuck
Yeah,
on
it's
your
like a
back.
cat. Like you throw a cat in there and they fall like this,
Yeah.
but always it's just like flip this way, flip this way, flip this way. It's just like you get put on your butt and just automatic instinct is to like switch and come back on and take control and get aggressive and push forward. And I think it's that very like split second of where you're both kind of in a neutral position, where I think the wrestler tends to have the aggressive nature to like kick their feet back and drive and take that top position. And I think that, yeah, it's definitely like a good quality like for the wrestlers have, whereas a jiu-jitsu person is very like comfortable. They almost are like, okay, like let's go here, like
Yeah, there's a
happy
kind
to
of
be there almost.
laziness. There's a kind, and we, me and Jim can talk about jujitsu. We've been doing jujitsu. There's a kind of
I'm like, I
lazy.
can't say that. Jiu-jitsu people
It
don't hate
just is.
me.
It's just the truth.
Well, it's
It's
a
the
laid
truth.
back
And
culture. It's a laid back
yeah, I mean,
culture, and it
it's the
is.
Yeah,
truth.
I like that. Laid back.
Yeah, it's yeah. That's a nice way of putting laziness, Jim. But I'm not. I'm going to call myself out on it because I am lazy sometimes in training. When I'm just training in a regular class or I'm teaching a class. Yeah, I'm rolling my students. They get me with a sweep. I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to lay down and engage my guard. You can't be doing that shit in MMA. You do that a couple times, you're going to lose the round. Bottom position MMA is just seen as just you're losing, right? I mean, unless you have a triangle locked in or you're killing them with elbows. It's very rare. It's very rare to win a fight from your back. And so, like I said, the jujitsu every sport has bad. I mean, Muay Thai has bad habits. There's certain clinch maneuvers from Muay Thai that'll leave you exposed to different kind of strikes and go behinds and things like that. So it's just every base of martial art, I think, has at a certain point everybody's going to be a MMA fighter. MMA is going to be the martial art, I feel.
Yeah, that's why it's almost a different sport to have like jiu-jitsu MMA, or like MMA jiu-jitsu, MMA wrestling, like MMA like striking, because it's just like, can I stand like super square like a boxer and have this style and where I'm super upright? Like most likely like not. You're gonna get your leg kick the crap out of it, and you're gonna get taken down. So it's like every style it's almost a different sport to change it to like MMA, whatever, MMA Muay Thai.
Yeah. Which brings me into this question. You're not new to the game, and you've been around to see the change and the evolution specifically of women's MMA, let alone MMA in general, is always evolving. What are your thoughts about women's MMA and its evolution? Do you think it's on par with the bigger community, so to speak, because more people are joining in on it, more females are joining in? Do you think it's evolving at a fast clip right now?
Oh, for sure. I think it's come so far. I've been, training the sport for like 13, 14 plus years, and it just evolves so much. And I think it's one of the fastest growing sports that I've ever seen in my lifetime. To see it go from, women shouldn't fight. What, who are these people? Like, who cares? Women aren't serious coming to train to the gym, to where now it's like, but never going to be in the UFC, to now it's like some of the biggest stars in the UFC are women. We are headlining cards. It was a huge thing for me when I saw a woman headline a card here and there. I was like, yes, we got one. Now it's like a regular thing. It happens all the time. And I wanted it to get to a place where it wasn't like, look, we got one. It's like, oh, that's normal. That's just another everyday thing. And that's where I think we're getting. And that's where we're getting with jiu-jitsu, like with women in these classes, like in wrestling and all these classes I go to. It's not just, okay, I'm the one girl in here. Oh, look, there's one. It's like, I've been to wrestling classes at my gym and jiu-jitsu where there's more women than men. And I'm like, yeah, hell yeah. Like, this is awesome. And, obviously it's still growing. And, there's comfort, things that, people have to deal with. But I would say with all the kids that have approached me and all the first time fans that have come to me, women that are like, I watched you on The Ultimate Fighter, like the all women season. That is the first time I ever watched it. And I started watching it big fan of the sport since then. And I started training, and like, that is the coolest thing for me to hear.
Yeah, there's definitely like an evolution of women's MMA. I mean, we saw, just to be honest, we saw one of the pioneers of women's MMA, Ronda, just kind of get, she got passed up. Let's just be honest. She got passed up. She wasn't a complete fighter. She wasn't a great striker. She had a great judo, and that could only last her a certain amount of time, right? And then you saw when she was facing these complete fighters that had the whole package, Holly, Amanda, she couldn't keep up. And that kind of tells you that the sport is evolving. You have to be complete. Back in the day, I felt like I could train a jiu-jitsu girl, with a good takedown to get into the top 10. Nowadays there's no way. There's no way. Nowadays you have to have striking. You have to, there's like this evolution of leg kicks, this evolution of, standing up, wrestling, all this stuff. You have to be complete. So yeah, I think women's MMA is moving up. Now I need to know how I can get women to come to my jiu-jitsu classes, because my gym is like 10-1, men to women. And I don't know if that's ever going to change, but I'm happy to hear that there's a lot of, you're going to classes where there's more women than men. But hey, I wanted to talk about you're on a 4-fight winning streak, right? That's correct. Yes. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, you're on a 4-fight. So you're probably 1 or 2 fights, or even could be up for the title. You're ranked top. You're ranked number 4. You're basically in line for the title, right? Do you have a fight lined up? Is there do you plan on fighting this year?
I don't have a fight lined up right now. I don't have anything like crazy, but just kind of dealing with like just rehabbing a couple of like little injuries that I've had, trying to skill build right now, evolve, and just kind of being patient and kind of see what the next mix up in the division is. Who I believe Rose is in line for the title, but I don't know if Whaley is allowed to get out of the China, or if something else is going to happen. So I'm just kind of staying, I'm slowly like building myself up and training and trying to just stay ready, honestly, for any great opportunity that might pop up, because that would be such a Cinderella story for me, such a dream to have one be the first champion in the division, and then to like fight and claw my way back to another title fight, and potentially another title win would be like a dream come true.
Honestly, you can if I was to give you any advice, you could out wrestle all these girls. Especially the girls that are above you in the rankings. Come on, Joanna, Andrade, Rose, Whaley. You could out wrestle these girls, with one hand probably.
I think Andrade is actually going to stick up at 125 and try and fight for that title. So I think I only got a couple people ahead of me. So, fingers crossed.
Right. This is kind of the dilemma me and Jim talked about. If you take these fighters down, I think you win. It's one of these things where they might be more, well-rounded, whatever. They might be, striking, but you have such a tremendous wrestling advantage in my mind. When I've seen you fight, you have such a tremendous wrestling advantage that it's, my money's on you on any of those fighters.
Well,
yeah.
Thank you for that.
So quick question.
I'm serious. And you'll be an underdog, which is, the right bet. Go ahead, Jim.
So quick question, changing gears here. Carla, are you holding your phone with your hand?
Yes.
This whole time? So shouts out to your endurance to be able to hold such a steady. I saw you make an adjustment. I'm like, wait, has she been holding her phone this whole time?
Fans didn't know about that. I have endurance for days.
That's endurance. And it's a steady hold.
It's an isometric hold.
It's
an isometric hold.
Man.
Ask Mike Safai about isometric exercise.
I
want to ask you real quick. I want to ask you real quick, Carla. This is something that I'm personally more interested in than probably anybody. So I I do weight cutting for fighters in the UFC. They kind of reach out to me a lot for weight cutting. That's one of my specialties. Do you, just sharing what you are comfortable sharing, do you have a specific protocol for weight cutting? Do you work with a coach? Is there any, when do you start your weight cut? Can you just give us a rundown of it? I'm interested.
Well, I've honestly been so light over the years that I've never had to really cut weight. So it was just like a eat what I want when I show up to fight week, and like just it's a breeze, and just I'll run in like plastics one time or maybe two, and like that's pretty much it. And I make weight, but I'm right now I'm the biggest I've ever been. I've been actually trying to put on weight and be strong for, because so many of these girls are so big. So I've been like taking creatine, and I've been like eating, protein, and doing all these things with my diet to try and get strong. I've been lifting. So, like I basically like I use whatever the UFC PI gives us. They make our meals for us with like, which is super convenient. They give you your meals for the day and your snacks for the day, and then they tell you how much water to drink. They give you like certain supplements or whatever to take during fight week. So they kind of make it like a no-brainer, to be honest. Like they just have everything lined up. Even the post weigh-in, you have like this sheet, and it's just like, okay, in 30 minutes, drink this drink. Within 1 hour, drink this drink. Have these crackers at this time, or applesauce, and then have these crackers, and then, so it's just so laid out. It made me feel better than I've ever felt. Like once I started like having that and using it, really made a difference. So, I just kind of was like, oh, it's just making weight, I can eat what I want, but, actually hydrating the right way and cutting down the right
Yeah,
way
there's
has
definitely
like
a
made a big
science.
difference.
Yeah, and so you work with a PI? Do you work with anybody specifically? Like I think it's like Clint's over there, Charles. Do you work with anybody specifically, or just you just get a plan from them and you kind of just do it on your own?
Well, shout out to Clint, because he and I, like, when I was trying to first start gaining weight, like, about a year and a half ago, we were having meetings every single week, like 30 minutes plus. First meeting was really long, for like a couple months. Like, how am I going to gain weight? How am I going to change my diet? This and that. But during the fight weeks, I actually, whatchamacallit, why am I spacing? Who did you say? Charles. Yeah.
Clint,
Oh my God, Charles.
Charles, yeah,
Yeah,
Charles.
he's amazing. He's been at my fight weeks, and he's so on top of it. Like, I got you this. I'm here. Like, do you need this? Here's your Epsom salts. Like, he's on top of everything and super helpful and cool. And it's like really easy to work with him. So yeah, I felt lucky to have had him in Fight Island too. That was a crazy experience, but I was really glad to have had him there to like help me out with my cut.
Got it. So at the towards the end of the cut, right? Um, do you are you ever in a sauna? You said you just put on plastics and just kind of just run it off pretty much? Is that how
Yeah.
you?
Oh my gosh. Like, so I just kind of run. It's not even a hard run. It's like I'm on 4.5 on the treadmill. Like, I'm pretty much walking for like 20 minutes. I sit in my sauna suit, like under blankets or something, for like 30 minutes. I lose a couple, like maybe 3+ pounds doing that, 3-4 pounds. And then I'll go sit in a sauna for like maybe like 30 minutes, 20, 30 minutes, and then I'll be on weight.
Right. So
So
you're going into these fights, I would say relatively light compared to your opponents, right? Your opponents are probably going to be cutting more, I would assume.
pretty much every time. Yeah, that's
Pretty
been the
much every time.
case.
So now, I mean, now you're bulking and you're trying to build up that weight. I think that's a good idea, actually. Yeah, I think I have an idea of what weight you should be at. Just because I work with a lot of fighters on a different spectrum. I have like charts and things, but yeah, that's that I was super curious. I think most fighters kind of have your approach. They're not cutting a whole, at least the lower weight fighters. I know a lot of people do cut a lot of weight, but the women that I've worked with on the lower weight classes, they generally have your approach. It's just, it's not a huge cut. There's no a ton of protocols. And
Have you
you
ever
just,
worked with like one of the top 10 women in my division? I'm like,
I have not. I
I'm
have
like,
not.
I
They
know they get
probably
up to
cut,
like,
right?
I've heard as big as 160, one of the girls, and
Let me
155 for a
take a
few of the
look.
other. I'm like,
Let me
what?
take a look real quick. Only I've worked briefly with the girl. She's you know, I hate this. She's a little older. Marion. You know, I worked a little with her. I gave her a
Renault?
little,
Yeah.
yeah. I gave her a little bit of you know, weight cutting advice not long ago, and she, I believe, was cutting a bit. Yeah, she was cutting, I think, 10 pounds. So this, you know, that's a bit. But yeah, I mean, that's, I'm super interested in this because I want to know if you have any tricks that, you know, I need to know, because I'm always trying to get, you know, a little bit of, oh, that's actually good. And you told me something today that I'm going to keep in here, and that's very important. And you said the 30 seconds, something like 30 seconds on the ground, and if there's no submission, you're probably not going to get a submission. That's very, very interesting, because I never thought about it like that. I always thought, like, you know, the better person on the ground, they're going to find the submission. But yeah, you're right. The time is very important. I think about when I'm on the back doing jiu-jitsu. You know, if I don't submit the guy in 30 seconds, I'm probably in for a world of hurt, actually. So yeah, that was enlightening. Yeah. All right.
So
Jim.
real quick, yeah, I did when you mentioned Fight Island. What was your experience like over there, and what do you think the future of Fight Island is going to be now that they just wrapped it up with their final card over there?
Um, my experience was pretty kind of raw because it was a first run, you know, it was like they were being super like precautious, like, okay, nobody touch anything, wear your mask everywhere, like no social, like, you know, it wasn't really like a social type of environment. It was like, you know, we didn't get to experience too much. The only time I got to go out was, well, actually I did get to go to like do the race cars, and you know, but everything was like mask up, and this, you know, quarantine for 2 days. When you get there, they taped your door, and then they would like leave your food, like you would call in your food, they'd leave it at your door, open the door, I think they'd retape it. Like, it was crazy. But now, like, I saw they were all wearing the cool like headdresses, and they're all partying together, drinking, no one's wearing masks. I'm like, what? Like, why didn't we have that, you know? But I don't know what the future is going to be like. I don't know if they're going to, how long this pandemic and the whole world being like this is going to last. Like, are they going to need to, you know, keep doing this, or are they going to start like opening up? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, and who really knows that? And speaking of pandemic, how have you been getting by and using the pandemic? I mean, you did say you've been resting a lot, but I'm sure, you know, you're doing your drill work and everything. So has it really affected, even if you wanted it to, has it affected the way you go about training?
Not really. Like, I'm when I'm in camp. So I was in camp since January. So I was in camps like back to back because the fight got pushed and everything. So the pandemic was like business as usual for me. Like, I kind of stayed to myself, had my meals mailed to me, just kind of like focused on training, gym home, gym home. So that was normal. And now it's, you know, just couple little adjustments. Actually, I've had to evacuate my home yesterday because there's fires where I live in Orange County.
Yeah, I
So I had
smell
to
it.
pack up everything that's important to me into like 6 suitcases, and I took off. I'm actually staying in Dana Point like right now. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, that's not
no,
even
that
pandemic stuff. That's just California is crazy, man. We haven't been able to run our businesses. You know, it's crazy. I haven't eaten at a restaurant for
Yeah.
forever. But it is what it is. You know, hopefully it'll be over soon. We're year's almost over. Um, I had this another kind of personal question that I want to ask you, Carla. I have girls that I train, jujitsu students who, you know, they want to compete in ADCC. They want to, you know, do these big jujitsu tournaments. I cannot find them proper wrestling training ever, you know. And I'm not talking about wrestling like, you know, I'm going to show them a couple moves. I'm talking about a proper wrestling room. I want to get the environment, you know. I want them to wear the shoes. I want them to, you know, do the conditioning, all that stuff. How do you, as an adult, how do you train wrestling?
So that is very difficult. And that is one of the great things and terrible things about wrestling. So in high school, you have this environment where you're not paying to be there. You're on a team. If you act up or you don't, it is such a grind. It's like, if you don't do something the right way, you're off the team. So everyone is, you're like, go, 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 go. But when you're paying to do something, most average people don't want something that's super like grind hard every day. Like, so it's very hard for, I think, wrestling to be like a mainstream type of thing because it's so hard and demanding. And it's like a, you take someone down, get up, let's go. Like the mentality.
Most people won't survive the training.
Yeah, the mentality is very different. It's not something that you would kind of like do chill and, I got one. It's like very difficult. So I think it's hard to find wrestling. What I've had to do in the past is I've had to like go, hit up people that I've known who've like coached or been involved in high schools, go into that. A good option is a lot of, during the off season, which is after wrestling season. So it's the third season, there's freestyle clubs. So freestyle clubs are basically like a different type of wrestling. It's an Olympic style where you go flat, but these are clubs that are like after school and and wrestling, which I love, is such a cheap sport to be involved in. You probably pay like $100 or something for like the whole, like, season or whatever, if that. So, and they can also compete at the freestyle tournaments on the weekend. There's a freestyle tournament every Saturday, which is open. You can just show up and go wrestle. And if you're a woman and you're kind of new, you can be like, have them. And it's like, I think $25 to have a USA Wrestling card, maybe like $10 to compete or something. It's so cheap. You get like, and you don't lose and you're out. You lose and you might get more matches. If you're kind of new and you want like experience, you can ask them like, do you guys have any girls here I can get like a side match with, and they'll set you up side matches. So that's a great way to get experience. But other than that, like I used to go to high schools and train. Sometimes in different areas, there's girls that get together and like meet on certain days, like in high school or whatever. They'll have like a wrestling room. Like there's one in a college, like kind of locally, where like all the girls come on certain nights and kind of get training in. So that's an option. Like I said, the freestyle thing is a good option because a lot of high schoolers tend to be smaller. Yeah. So it's like good partners for women. So that's kind of, that's doing that. My advice to get training in, if there's not a wrestling class like at Jiu-Jitsu.
Right. I mean, at my Jiu-Jitsu school, I don't have anybody teach wrestling. So it's me showing like some singles here and there. But, we did that. Me and one of my students, we went to a community college, and, it was off season. We just registered for the class. We just in there with the rest of the team. It's good enough. And I think it's I like it, but I feel like the style of wrestling that you need to for jiu-jitsu is more along the lines of like wrestling for MMA. I feel like it's more of like you kind of just need certain skills, and you don't want to get too deep into the world of wrestling, because then you do kind of pick up some of these habits, and that's the conundrum I'm always in. How do you learn wrestling for grappling?
So, okay, since you say that, what is your opinion on training the gi for MMA? Because it's the same thing to me. You're learning, like, am I going to be able to grab your collar and do this and that? Like, no, but a lot of people feel that, it's debatable, but a lot of people feel that it is a good thing to train in the gi, maybe even during off season, to kind of learn these skills. And then for me, once you get closer to a competition or a fight, it's like, okay, let's focus on things that are more applicable to the fight.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, yeah, you're right. It's just, even if you're doing certain things that might, not translate or even, steer you in the direction, you're still getting the majority of what you're looking for in a wrestling room. And I think it's a great idea for people listening who, want to train. Because I get this question like every month, at least once. I want to train wrestling. What do I do? And I don't know. I just go back to high school, go back to college.
Go back to high school.
Most community colleges, they would probably be happy to have an extra body in the room. I feel like, when I
Oh,
went
for
to the community
sure.
college, they loved it. They were like, oh, a human that I can throw. So
Yeah, I mean,
they
the
loved it.
community colleges, especially if it's the class, that's super easy to like get involved in. If it's an actual team, sometimes they'll still be cool, especially if you have grappling experience like you do jiu-jitsu. Usually you're not just like flopping over the
Yeah.
place. I don't know, like, a lot of like community college are definitely like open and willing to like accept, someone new. And even high schoolers, like at high schools, if you want to be like, well, I can, help as a coach, because they always need extra bodies to help with things on the team. Like, oh, I can help you guys out, and just kind of like submerge yourself like in being a part of that team and going to training and learning.
Got
So,
it.
working on wrapping this up, I have a couple questions, but we'll start off with your nickname. How did you get it? And the follow-up to that is, what is your favorite cookie, or what are your favorite cookies?
So I got my nickname, like I have a huge sweet tooth, and people would always bring stuff for the gym, like, oh, I baked this cake or cookies for you guys. And I'm always like, yes. I would always like just snatch a bunch and eat them. And one day my coach was in the lounge and I was like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I was baby carrying like all these cookies, like just walking away. He was like, Carla, you're always eating so many freaking cookies. You're like a freaking cookie monster. And he just was calling me that like nonstop since then. I could not shake the nickname as hard as I tried, because I wanted like a tough nickname like the killer, but
Cookie monster.
I love it now.
So what's your favorite?
My favorite is I love like kind of like softer cookies, like chewy cookies, like double chocolate chip. I love chocolate.
Damn.
That's my favorite.
That's it. That's what's up. This conversation is over. It just ends right there. Soft chocolate chip cookies. That's it. Okay, so now I want to provide this opportunity to call your shot. Proclaim how you see your career playing out. Give it to the universe. Let's hear it.
I give it to the universe. I see like someone fighting for the title, and I see me being the next in line to fight for that title, winning that title, defending it, staying in the sport for another like few years, just making myself like a true, like solidifying myself in the history of this division, and just kind of like putting my shoes or putting my gloves in that center, and, having my goodbye. And
that's what's up. With two
thank
different
you, MMA world.
with two different era of championship belts. Two different eras of belts, right?
Gotta get that new belt.
Gotta get that new belt.
I don't think anybody has won a belt with a gap, like that big, right? Like if you were to do it, I think you would be like the first person to do that, right? Can you think of anybody? Yeah, to like, I mean, like GSP reclaimed the belt, but it was like a one fight turnaround. This would be incredible. It would be like a, something like
Cinderella
10
story.
fights. Yeah, it would be. It
MMA
would
Cinderella story.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, you like, how crazy would it be if you were, let's say, Rose and Wei Li fight for the title, right? Which I think is what they're planning for. How crazy would it be if you fight Rose again, for the title? That would be crazy. So that's something that I feel like could happen. You want to talk about fairy tales and Cinderella, so that could happen. And so yeah. Jim, any other questions for Carla?
No, that was it. You answered all the questions. You held that phone up like a champ. I challenge anyone to hold your phone up we've been talking for close to an hour now. Challenge you. I dare anyone.
I can't even hold my hand here for like 10 seconds.
Exactly. Man. Come on now. So anyways, Carla, I want to thank you once again for taking the time out of your day to join us and just kind of dork out and talk about grappling, MMA, and all things in between.
I love it.
So it was great reconnecting with you. I haven't spoke to you since that one shoot years ago. So it was really good to reconnect with you now, speak with you, and man, wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you guys so much. It was great talking to you. Always love talking about grappling.
All right, Carla. See you guys. Coach, thank you.
Bye.
And Carla, how can people stay in touch with you? Do you have an Instagram, Twitter, any handle?
Carla Esparza 1 on Twitter and Instagram, Carla Esparza fan page, Facebook. And I haven't been on it, but I just made a TikTok because all the kids are doing it. Carla Esparza MMA because someone stole my other name.
Yeah, do some dances.
Yeah.
That's
what's up.
That's it. Thanks,
That's
Carla.
All right.
Thanks,
All right,
guys.
Carla. Thanks.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.